Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have Callan's first official mock draft 1.0. I know he is just as excited as I was last week to get to his, but before we jump into that, just a few quick bits of news. Starting with the signing that happened this previous week with the Atlanta Falcons signing longtime Baltimore Raven Calais Campbell to a one-year deal. So Campbell will be going from one bird team to another, just from the AFC to the NFC. And then a few signings that I actually forgot to mention last week, but did happen. 2 weeks ago, the Jets signed former Chief and wide receiver Mecole Hardman to a one-year deal. And the driving force in that signing was a trade that happened when the Jets traded their current wide receiver Elijah Moore, as well as a third-round pick to the Cleveland Browns, and in return got the Cleveland Browns second-round pick. So a little bit of receiver rotation there, especially in New York, but also picking up another great guy there in Cleveland.
Yeah, and for the Jets, that second-round pick has been rumored to be a catalyst for the Rodgers trade because it's another second-round pick for the Jets, who could go with 2 second-round picks instead of 1 first-round pick.
Certainly, and the Packers showed last year that they are willing to mess around and trade those second-round picks and receive extra second-round picks, doing at least the one trade with the Vikings, if not 2 trades, I think they did in the second round in 2022. So very interesting right there. But now we are going to jump into Callan's first official 2023 NFL mock draft.
Yep, and with the first pick in the 2023 NFL draft, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida. Now, I know this is kind of a shocking pick a little bit because he's not considered one of the top 2, but the word is out of Carolina is that the organization likes his athleticism. It reminds them of Cam Newton, and that Frank Reich is fallen in love with him. Now, whether that's one of those smoke screens or not, you know how that goes during draft season, but that's the report out of Carolina. So I think that I buy into it and think that they pick Anthony Richardson first overall.
Yeah, like he said, I really do struggle to trust anything that comes out from the media during draft season because it's all smoke and mirrors. Everyone's trying to confuse the other person. And even when the truth is being told, there's so much other clusters and confusion happening around it that it just blends into the craziness. But I don't see it actually happening, but I don't hate this pick. I really don't. There's just so much upside with Anthony Richardson. He's probably, arguably, maybe him and Will Levis, the least NFL ready right now when it comes to the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks. But he also, in my opinion, has the highest upside out of any quarterback in this draft right now. So big swing, but could be a home run.
Yeah. And then with the second pick, the Houston Texans go with C.J. Stroud, the quarterback out of Ohio State. Now, they have their pick between the top 2, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. But I believe that they like Stroud better. He's just more NFL ready, and I believe he has the better arm than Bryce Young. And I think he just fits better with the Texans system and what they want to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think you don't really go wrong with C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, of course, not knowing how either of their careers are going to pan out. I personally think that Bryce Young fits the Texans just a little better. He's more NFL ready and prepped in the mental aspect of it. He's not quite as accurate, doesn't have quite as much of an arm as CJ Stroud, but he knows the game better. He's very calm under pressure, and he's going to be dealing with a lot of young guys in a rebuilding team. So something you want is someone who is wise beyond their years.
Yeah. And then with the third pick, the Arizona Cardinals go with Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman out of Georgia. Now, I believe they go with defensive line instead of edge here because they need help replacing J.J. Watt along that defensive line. And what a player to get in Jalen Carter, who even though he's had some off-the-field troubles, is probably one of the highest graded prospects to come out of the draft this year.
Yeah, they run that 3 front, and they've shown that even kind of lesser-known guys can really get in there and perform well. More specifically, Zach Allen, who is now somewhere else. I can't remember who he signed with, but Jalen Carter would be a great replacement for him.
And replacing Zach Allen,
and
too.
It shows that that's just a well-schemed position for the Arizona Cardinals. So if you get a real game changer in there around with a good scheme around him, that makes for good stuff in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. And with the 4th pick, the Indianapolis Colts go with quarterback Will Levis out of Kentucky. And I think they like the bigger, more pocket passer quarterback since they've kind of gone with Matt Ryan and Phil Rivers in the past years. I think that they fit more into what the Colts want to do, even though Shane Steichen's coming in with the experience with Jalen Hurts. I still think that the organization as a whole is still more ran like they want to do, and so I think they go with the pocket passer out of Kentucky, and I think Bryce Young starts to fall in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, Shane Steichen has had a quarterback who squats like 700 or 800 pounds the past few years. Now he goes with the quarterback with the biggest guns in the draft this year. He's just a weight room guy, I guess. I don't know. But I personally can't see it happening. If Bryce Young's on the board at 4, I don't know how you don't pull the trigger on him. But I do have a huge draft crush on Will Levis.
So. They don't like his size. I don't know. It's not working out for Kyler Murray, so I feel like that's a hit on the guy's size.
It's true. It's a big thing in the NFL. It's true.
And so moving on with the 5th pick, the Seattle Seahawks get their choice of the edge rushers with the 5th pick and go with Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama. And I think they go with Anderson Jr., who is graded as one of the top prospects in this draft and one of the top edge rushers, and especially coming from Alabama, where he's played in the SEC against really NFL-ready talent. He really has proved himself to be one of the top prospects in this draft, and the Seahawks get one of the top defensive players.
Yeah, pretty simple one there. I don't see anybody other than Will Anderson going as the top edge rusher in this draft, so a steal for Seattle.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to the Detroit Lions with the 6th pick, and they get the other edge rusher, Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. And they team him up with Aiden Hutchinson, their defensive pick out of last year. And they make quite the tandem in Detroit with 2 dominant edge pass rushers in Hutchinson and Tyree Wilson.
Yeah, some people say Detroit took Aiden Hutchinson a little early, and it worked out really well for them. So maybe it'll work out again.
Mm-hmm. And with the next pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select cornerback Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois. And I think they go with defensive back here instead of the fastest player overall, even though Devin Witherspoon did have quite the 40 time. I can't remember what it was, but I know he had one of the top ones.
Yep, especially for corners.
Yep, so that matches what the Raiders want to do with going with one of the fastest guys available in this draft.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong with any of the corners in this first round, and the Raiders can't really go wrong with any position in general because they need a little bit of everything everywhere. So it's just pick whatever you want for the Raiders at 7.
Mm-hmm. And with the 8th pick, the Atlanta Falcons go with wide receiver Quentin Johnson out of TCU. And this matches what they did last year with Drake London, and they want to mirror what they used to have with Julio Jones and Roddy White and go with 2 big-bodied wide receivers. And I think that this is what they do with the draft this year and go with the big man out of TCU.
You know, when I first saw this pick, I was really confused. But after hearing that explanation, I really like it because it was kind of a rejuvenation in Matt Ryan's career when they got those 2 really good big-body wide receivers. So we'll see if they can get Desmond Ritter's career off to a good start.
Yeah, and that's again kind of what the organization likes to do, and you can tell, from the past kind of repeats itself.
Yep.
So we'll see if the Falcons can pull that off again. And with the 9th pick, the Chicago Bears go with Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. And this is the top offensive tackle in the whole draft, probably the top offensive lineman in general, really. And you really have to protect Justin Fields here. If you're going to go with Fields, which they obviously are by trading that first pick, you have to protect him. And even though he is able to scramble around and run, you don't want him doing that all that much. You want him to be able to throw from the pocket or throw from the run as a design. But this matches what the Bears want to do with helping with that offensive line build up to protect Fields.
Yeah, Skoronski's my top tackle in the draft. I think this is a great pick for Chicago. He's just so fundamentally sound. He's almost robotic, which for any other position sounds bad. But when you're an offensive lineman, when you're so sound that you look robotic, it's so cool to see.
Yeah, it'll be a good pickup for the Bears. And with the 10th pick, I have the Philadelphia Eagles going with Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. And this is the top running back to come out of the draft in a long time. This could be one of the steals of the draft, really. I mean, he could be first overall if not for the way the draft needs fall. This was one of the top players in college football last year, and will be the first Texas running back picked in the first round since Cedric Benson in 2004.
Interesting. Yeah, Bijan Robinson is my favorite guy in the draft this year, solely on just where is he going to go? Because as Callan mentioned, he's the best running back. Just needs depending. He could literally go anywhere from pick 3 to falling out of the first round. It's just insane. So it's really interesting to see where he's going to fall.
Yeah, and I think he'll fall to Philly, and that'll be one damn good pickup for the Eagles. Moving on, for the 11th pick, I have the Tennessee Titans going with offensive tackle Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. Now, they obviously let go of Taylor Lewan earlier this year, so they need to rebuild that offensive line, and I think they begin with picking the second best offensive lineman in this draft in Paris Johnson.
Yeah, he's not as fundamentally sound like I was talking about with Skaranci, but Paris Johnson is just a bully on the offensive line. He loves getting guys moving, and that's perfect for what they have there with Derrick Henry.
Reminds me of Mekhi Becton. I know it's kind of a weird comparison because they're so early in their careers, but the way that he's built and all that reminds me of the same.
Yeah, they're just big.
And moving on, the Houston Texans with the 12th overall pick select Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State, and they match the Ohio State quarterback with his Ohio State wide receiver. And I think this is a perfect pickup and a perfect pairing for the Houston Texans, who are building quite the offense down in Houston, and then have quite the defense to go with DeMeco Ryans leading that new defensive unit. I think the Houstons are going to be a force to mess with in the AFC this year.
I mean, you love to see reunions. Look at how well it worked when Cincinnati reunited Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Call me crazy, because I 100% am saying this. But if Bryce Young is still on the board at 12, do you go Bryce Young? Do you take the top 2 quarterbacks? I mean, what are the odds you go wrong if you take the top 2 quarterbacks? Like I said, call me crazy because I am, but crazier things have happened. That's all I'm saying.
Boy, John Madden used to say if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. So
well, you can let them fight it out. Maybe
I don't know how that
one.
works in the NFL draft. That'd be quite the shocking thing to happen.
Keep it in mind.
Oh, man. Well, moving on, speaking of Bryce Young, moving on to the 13th overall pick, the New York Jets select quarterback Bryce Young out of Alabama. Now, I want to say this is on the premises that the Aaron Rodgers deal actually falls through and does not happen. So the New York Jets, now scrambling for a quarterback, get lucky when Bryce Young falls to them. Looked at as one of the top quarterback prospects to come out of the draft this year. He falls to the Jets at 13, who, even though he doesn't have the exact size, he still has all the skills and attributes that are needed to be a strong quarterback. And lately, there's been strong quarterbacks that come out of Alabama, so the lineage is there.
Hell, Rodgers deal falling through or not, if the Jets are picking at 13 and Bryce Young's there at 13, Rodgers be damned, I'm still picking him because that's just way too much to give up on, but huge steal for New York.
That too. If at 13, say they don't have to trade that 13th overall pick and Bryce Young is there, do you sit him behind Rodgers for a couple of years, or does that stress Rodgers out? You know how that does,
He's a risk with his size, but it's a risk worth taking in my eyes.
I can say that now, now that
Rodgers you can make fun of him.
Gone. Yeah, now I can make fun of him.
Your ex-quarterback.
Not yet. I mean, gosh, think about it. If he does fall through, do we just be like, all right?
He said trade deadline was draft, and we're, 2-3 weeks out from the draft at this point?
Yeah. We'll see. No, there's been nothing really so far. The only thing I've heard is that they're far away in talks. So
that's always fun.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on with the mock draft, with the 14th overall pick, the New England Patriots select Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa. And this is a perfect system fit for Bill Belichick, who loves the Iowa connection, who has had the relationship with Kirk Ferentz and benefits off of Iowa players more than any NFL franchise in the league. But I think Van Ness is a perfect system guy for the Patriots. He can line up in the 3-4. He can line up in a 4-3. He can rush the passer off the edge. Belichick will be able to use him as a multi-tool in that multi-tool defense.
Yeah, Belichick is known for turning hard workers into all-star players, and you are going to get a hell of a hard worker in Lucas Van Ness, so I like it.
Yeah, it's definitely the Patriot way.
Yeah, certainly.
Similar to the Hawkeye way, seems similar.
They got that bond there.
Yep. So moving on to the Packers pick at 15 overall. Now, again, this is assuming that Rodgers stays, but I have them going safety Brian Branch out of Alabama, who is the top safety defensive back in this draft. And I believe that they need to fill that safety need with Adrian Amos seemingly leaving the Packers. And even though they did sign Travarius Moore from the 49ers, they possibly are going to move Darnell Savage back into the slot. So we kind of have a hole in that safety spot if Savage does move to the slot, even though it's between Savage and Keyshawn Nixon. But I just feel like Savage played so much better in the slot, and Keyshawn Nixon is such an electrifying kick returner. Keep him as that.
Yeah.
He's going to have to probably return punts this year too, so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and Brian Branch is a good pickup for really any team because he's so versatile. They have him in here as a true safety, and that's probably where he does thrive as a true safety. You can throw him in the slot and he's going to do well. You can throw him in as like a sub linebacker and he's going to do really well. So it's a good pickup pretty much no matter where he goes.
Another multi-tool kind of player who would be able to fit in that Packers system.
Exactly.
And moving on to the 16th overall pick, the Washington Commanders select Osiris Torrance, the guard out of Florida. And this is the replacement for Brandon Sheriff, who they lost in free agency last year, and they were not able to replace last year very well. They need to rebuild that offensive line for whoever they play at quarterback, whether it's Sam Howell or who did they sign?
Who did they sign?
Gosh darn it.
They signed someone. I'm totally blanking.
I want to say Brissett.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett.
Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell, but you got to protect them either way, and they were not able to do that very well last year with Carson Wentz getting hurt early on, even though that's maybe no fault of the offensive line. But either way, they need to rebuild that offensive line, and they get a strong offensive guard here at the 16th overall pick.
Yeah, injuries seem to be more of a Carson Wentz thing at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that offensive guard is one of the most underrated positions in the NFL. So I love to see ones go in the first round of the draft, and especially good ones like Osiris Torrance. So good pickup for Washington.
And with the 17th overall pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Now the theme here again is protect the quarterback, and they need to protect Kenny Pickett. So pick up one of the best offensive linemen available in Antoine Harrison, who can play left or right tackle.
Yeah, I personally think Broderick Jones is a little better of a tackle than Anton Harrison, but both of the guys are going to be really good in their own ways, and I like that pickup for the Steelers. I think it's a good fit for what they're trying to do with a young Najee Harris in the backfield.
Yeah, I like that. I just think that they fit more with Antoine Harrison because he can play more positions. They like that
rotation. Yeah,
multi-tool offensive lineman kind of guy. So moving on with the 18th overall pick, the Detroit Lions with their second pick select tight end Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. And this is probably one of the top tight ends in a very tight end rich draft this year. And this would be quite the pickup and replacement for TJ Hawkinson, who they traded late last year. He would fit right into the Detroit system very well. He's a hardworking player. He worked his way up in Utah, kind of that blue collar kind of way, the way that Detroit is, and he fits right into their system with what they want to do in Detroit.
Yeah, certainly. He's probably the best pure receiving tight end in the draft, so he'd be a great replacement for TJ Hawkinson, considering Hawkinson was one of their leading receivers the past few seasons.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking that they traded Hawkinson, but they get quite the replacement here in Dalton Kincaid.
I was very happy with the Hawkinson trade, of course.
Yes. I know. And moving on to the 19th overall pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. And we go back-to-back tight ends here with the Buccaneers, who are in somewhat of a rebuild here. And they, after releasing not Cade Otton, but their other tight end.
To be honest, I could not tell you who their other tight end is.
I can't remember who it is.
Gronk retired, of course, but I can't tell you who their other tight end was.
Cameron Brate.
Yep.
Right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They released Cameron Brate, so they need a replacement tight end there to go with Cade Otton, who they like to go with the double tight end set and team up with Mike Evans. And I think they get a hell of a player here in Michael Mayer, who's again one of the top receiving tight ends in this draft.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, this is a stacked tight end class. So I would not be surprised at all if we saw 2 back-to-back tight ends somewhere in the first round.
Yeah, that's very likely this year. And with the 20th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks go with Callan Cansey, the defensive lineman out of Pittsburgh. And this is one of the top pass rushing interior defensive linemen in the whole draft. And they fit what the Seahawks want to do with rebuilding that Legion of Boom with a pass rushing system, whether that's from the inside or the outside, where they get 2 immediate starting pass rushers with Will Anderson and Callan Cansey in this draft.
Man, if you pick up those 2 guys and mix them with the Uchenna Nwosu they picked up last offseason, that becomes a unbelievably elite pass rush all of a sudden. So great draft and great first round for Seattle in this mock.
And with the 21st overall pick, the LA Chargers select Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. And the Chargers benefit from one of the top cornerbacks in this draft falling to them just due to draft needs and other surprises in this draft. But because of that, he falls to the Chargers, who get one of the tallest and strongest corners in this draft and was looked at as one of the top defensive backs in this draft also.
Yeah, I think on the defensive side of the ball, this is the steal of your mock draft. This is a guy who I believe is top 10, if not 15 talent, and will probably end up going top 10. So if he really falls all the way to early 20s, that's a great pickup for Los Angeles.
Yeah. I think it just, like I said, just fell because a lot of teams want to protect the quarterback with their young quarterbacks. And I think that there's a big run on offensive linemen early in this draft. Moving on, though, with the 22nd overall pick, the Baltimore Ravens select edge rusher Nolan Smith out of Georgia. Now, I know that they have Odafe Alwu and David
Owe.
Odafe Owe. I knew I was going to mess that name up.
It's a tough name.
But I know they have him and David Ojabo. But David Ojabo is coming off a torn ACL, and so he's kind of on his rookie year too. And if not, and you're not kind of sure what you have in him. So just to be sure that you have dominant pass rushing, which the Ravens really want to build around, make this pick with the top edge rusher in my eyes in the draft with this selection at 22 overall.
Yeah, Nolan Smith's a really interesting one. He wowed at the combine, but sometimes you see those guys wow at the combine and never really pan out. But I agree. I really like Nolan Smith. I think he's going to be a good player. Definition of a speed rusher, running a 4.39, which is just insane for an edge rusher. But moving past that, good pickup for Baltimore here.
Yep. And at 23 overall, the Minnesota Vikings select Joey Porter Jr., the surprising pickup out of Penn State, who the Vikings need the defensive back help, and they get one of the top corners, man-to-man corners in this draft with Joey Porter Jr. And I know that my brother is very excited about that. That's his draft crush, and that's who he wants the Vikings to pick. So in this draft, that's how it falls. And What do you think would happen if that really does fall this way?
This is ideal situation for me. Joey Porter is just so sticky in man coverage. He's willing to help in the run. He's just going to be mean, get up in your face, a hard-nosed corner. Love this pickup here. Perfect fit for the new Brian Flores defense and fulfills what I think is Minnesota's biggest need right now, which is cornerback.
Definitely. And with 24th overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Miles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson. And the theme here, has become now pass rushing. We went from protecting the quarterback to now rushing the quarterback. And they want to build that pass rush and team someone up with Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars to help rush the passer in Jacksonville.
Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars are in a really good situation in this draft. They're a young team who performed really well last year. I think they personally end up going with one of the top corners there at 24 just because they're still yet to re-sign Shaquille Griffin. He's still in the free agency market.
That is true.
It's really just up to them. They get to pick whatever they want.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter who the corner is if you're rushing the passer.
Exactly. That's a hell of a point. As long as you can cover him for 2-3 seconds for the pass rush to get there. That's all you need. Pretty easy job.
That's what the key is to that pass rushing pressure.
Yep.
And with the 25th overall pick, the New York Giants select wide receiver Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC. And this is one of the top receivers in the draft this year. In my eyes, the top receiver in the draft. And they get a hell of a pickup with Jordan Addison here, who has got a pristine route running and is perfect for the slot guy. And they'll team up well with Isaiah Hodgins in New York.
Yeah, they were really hoping to get a true speedy slot corner with Kadarius Toney out of Florida in the 2021 draft. It just never really overly panned out for them. But Jordan Addison is a really fun guy for me because he is truly that. He is just a burner, which sometimes that works out well. Sometimes that kind of bites you in the ass. But I don't want to say he's truly just a burner because he does have some really good route running, especially deep route running on those streak routes. But it's a little bit of a toss-up for me, but still a prospect that I really like.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good one in the NFL. So, and then with the 26th overall pick, the Dallas Cowboys go with Brian Breesy, the defensive lineman out of Clemson. And they begin to rebuild that defensive line to help stop the run. And I believe that they get a really good pickup here in Brian Breesy, who is an interior defensive lineman who will be a run-stopping force early on in the Dallas Cowboys season.
Yeah, BC's just one of those amazing guys on and off the field, which you love to see. You can play him anywhere on the defensive line, and he's going to get some pressure for you and work hard. Good pickup here, pretty much wherever he goes, but especially to the Cowboys.
And with the 27th overall pick, the Buffalo Bills go with Zay Flowers, the wide receiver out of Boston College. This is kind of a surprising pickup here, but here's my analysis: is that get Josh Allen more weapons, get him as many weapons as possible, because obviously, in the fiery AFC, you're going to need as much firepower as possible. So team him up with Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox. I can't remember who they just signed at running back, but they got
not Miles Sanders. Oh man, we're struggling today.
We are struggling with our signings.
Who did they sign at running back?
But anyways, team him up with Josh Allen and get him more weapons to throw the ball around to, because they have to keep up with the firepower in the AFC.
Yeah, I like that pickup because there's Stephon Diggs, and then there's Gabe Davis somewhere down here, and then there's just such a huge drop-off for the Buffalo wide receiver room after that. So get you a guy who can kind of gap that huge drop-off and just be really good rotation for your team in general. I like that pickup.
Yeah, I think it'll be a strong pickup for Josh Allen. And then with the 28th overall pick, the Cincinnati Bengals go with Deonte Banks, the cornerback out of Maryland, and another big, tall corner. That's the theme of this draft. And they start to rebuild that defensive backfield, who continues to get burned by Eli Apple. So hopefully they get some new young blood in there to rebuild that defensive backfield and are able to shut down the pass better. And they have the firepower for the AFC. Now they have to build the firepower on defense to stop the rest of the AFC. And they get a good pickup here in Deontay Banks.
Yeah, the Bengals are in a really similar position to what I was talking about with the Jacksonville Jaguars, where they got a really good, solid young group. So they kind of get the liberty of being able to pick whatever they want. So why not take what is very arguably one of the hardest positions in the NFL at corner? I like it.
And with the 29th overall pick, the New Orleans Saints go with Broderick Jones, the big offensive tackle out of Georgia. And they are still trying to replace Teron Armstead, who they lost in free agency last year. And they start to replace him with Broderick Jones here in the first round, who's a big, big left tackle. And even though he's a left tackle only, he's a big man. And that's a big, big way to start to rebuild your offensive line.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, because I already have Ryan Ramczyk. I think they might try to move him to right tackle. Who knows how they'll actually do, because a lot of people think that's an easy transition, and it's not, moving from your left to right tackle. But he's one of those big bully ball guys, so I think he might actually would do okay. Yeah. Oh, wait, Ryan Ramczyk is a right tackle, so, they would slot him in at left tackle. You're correct.
Yep, they need.
So I think that of course, Derek Carr is going to enjoy this pickup, protecting his blind side, but I think Alvin Kamara is going to enjoy it more than anybody.
Yes, they will definitely benefit, both of them, from this pickup.
Yep.
And with the 30th overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota. And this is the top-rated center in the draft. He is a 4-year starter at Minnesota, and this is kind of their center in waiting for whenever Jason Kelce finally retires, who seems to have to announce that he's returning every year. So I figured he's close to retirement. And this way, if he does get injured or something, old bodies get beat up, they have a young replacement ready to go in John Michael Schmitz, waiting in the wing.
Yeah, with a team like Philly, who builds their identity from the offensive line, you got to make sure you have guys ready to step up when some of those older guys have to step back. So good pick.
And with the 31st and final overall pick in the first round, the Kansas City Chiefs select Will McDonald, the edge rusher out of Iowa State. And this is a similar pick to last year when they took George Karlaftis. They took the edge rusher who runs kind of a 4-3, kind of usually defensive end, but can brush the edge out of the 3-4. And it worked with Karlaftis, so why not go with Will McDonald and see if it works again?
Yeah, it seems like every year the Chiefs are sitting here in those last 4 picks, and it's just a complete toss-up on who they're going to pick. So
they always get to pick the best player available because they're always down here.
Exactly. It's so ironic that the Chiefs are always just such a toss-up. They're the hardest team to pick for in the first round, but I like this pickup here, I guess, because like I said, who knows what they'll go with. But,
well, they want to rush the passer. They got to team someone up with Karlaftis.
Yeah, definitely.
They let go of Frank Clark, so got to get someone in there to replace Clark.
Certainly. So that was Callan's first edition 1.0 of his 2023 mock draft. We'll be jumping back over to me next week, and I'll do my 2.0 mock draft. And next week and the week after that, Callan and I's mock draft 2.0s will have simulated trades if we want them. So definitely keep that in mind. We will have some simulated trades, and hopefully we get at least one kind of big real trade that happens in the first round. But it's been pretty quiet ever since that big shakeup at the first overall pick between Chicago and Carolina. So
it has been quiet since then. So perhaps a big trade is on the horizon.
Yeah, well,
quietest before, what is it? Always quietest before.
Oh, the calm before the storm? Yeah, maybe. Hopefully, because I got to say, these past 2 weeks have been kind of boring, so something needs to pick up. But
we'll see.
When something does happen, you will certainly hear it here, and make sure to tune back in next week for my mock draft 2.0. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.